Baylor Bears fans, breathe a sigh of relief. Your team has survived that brutal, devastating non-conference schedule at 3-0. Now the Bears get to take on the Big 12. Mark Rogers TV just a couple hours after Baylor disposed of Rice 38-10. The Owls put up a decent fight through much of the game, but Baylor pretty much had it in order from about halfway through the first quarter on. Couple notes in this game. Shock Linwood didn't have an outstanding game. He's been a bit nicked up. He ran it 13 times for 57 yards, but in doing so, he became the all-time leading rusher at Baylor University at 3,670 yards, 5 yards more than Walter Abercrombie. If you remember him, if you've watched football for quite some time, who was a pretty productive player a little bit later in the NFL for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So congratulations to Shock, who is now the all-time Baylor leading rusher. JaMycal Hasty in his place because, as we mentioned, Linwood a bit banged up with injuries. Hasty in his third game at the collegiate level, 14 carries for 105 yards. He had all the 14 carries in the first two games. Seth Russell came out, looked pretty awful. Aside from throwing the ball about 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage in the first 10 to 15 minutes of play and getting those short out routes to the sideline and dumping it off to the running backs, he did not look good early. He started to catch his stride, and one of the big reasons why is Katie Cannon was abusing Rice's best cornerback, JT Blasingame, regularly. He was doing it early. He did it often, and it was basically a go route. It was either a seam route or it was straight down the sideline from the wideout position. Katie Cannon caught 9 passes for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns and continually abused Blasingame. Seth Russell started to hit the mark. He started to throw the ball much better later in the game. Baylor punted its first 3 series, much because of Russell not being able to deliver the ball. He finished 22 of 38, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 bad interception. That was in the first 3 drives as well to Blasingame. One cause of concern possibly for Baylor as they approach the Big 12 schedule and some closer games. Chris Callahan, their field goal kicker, who had made 4 of 4 in the first 2 games, missed twice, then hit a chip shot 23-yarder, but with 2 kicks of any distance at all, and they weren't long kicks, he missed those 2 before hitting the 23-yarder, and he's going to have to be called upon, you would think, at some point to possibly win a game. For Baylor, they go back to Waco and they take on Oklahoma State in the Big 12 opener. Of course, the Cowboys have Pitt on Saturday. So that's the take on Baylor. Of course, Katie Cannon, one of the best in the business. Shock Linwood, a bit banged up. But, of course, as we have seen over the last few years with the likes of Terrence Williams and now with the freshman JaMycal Hasty, Baylor has a storehouse of running backs. Seth Russell is going to have to be better against the better teams, and they need the field goal kicker, Chris Callahan, to come through. For Rice, it's a rebuilding program, and they're 0-3 now. They will win ball games. They're getting better. They've taken on a Western Kentucky team that beat them up pretty badly, and also Army. They've got North Texas next week. So actually, Rice has played a more difficult non-conference schedule than Baylor. Go figure. Does that make any sense? Tyler Staling, third career start at quarterback, not the answer in the passing game. He's more of a threat as a runner. Big, tall kid, long strides, physical enough to break a lot of tackles against the Baylor defense. Forget the rushing yardage. He was sacked all over the place. He only had 28 rushing yards, but he had big runs downfield. He was 8 for 25 passing for 33 yards. What was extremely evident in this game is that Rice did not have the speed offensively to get to the perimeter against the Baylor defense. So anything wide was just not working, and anything downfield to a wide receiver didn't work either because those guys could just not gain space against the Bears cornerbacks. And they would sell out on the blitz on third down because Staling just didn't have enough time. They couldn't block everyone, and he just had nobody to throw to. And this was just continually the third down pattern for Baylor against Rice, with the wide receivers' inability to gain separation. Derek Dillard's a nice running back. He hit up the Bears for 14 carries and 124 yards, but committed what was probably the most costly play in the game. Not that Rice would have competed for the victory, but it was still a 21-10 game. 10 minutes or about a minute left in the first half. 21-10 Baylor. Rice was driving, and Dillard got loose for a 53-yard gain that would have taken Rice all the way down to the 15-yard line to possibly get to 21-17 at the break and put some pressure on Jim Grobe's club. Instead, he fumbled. Strip of the ball from behind, fumbled. Baylor recovered, actually drove it in the last 50 seconds down the field, only to get the field goal miss in the last 2 seconds from Callahan. But Dillard did rush for 124 yards, and Rice, despite the lack of any downfield passing game, did rush for 234 yards. Tabari McGaskey, quite the player on defense. Not that he made a ton of plays, but when he did make some plays, he brought the lumber, and he's a fast, hard-hitting kid who is versatile enough to play both linebacker and safety, and is the best NFL prospect for the Rice Owls. Baylor outgained Rice 638 to 235. Not a close game, but Rice hung in there, and it was still 21-10 with just a few minutes left in the third quarter. So they had a chance at that point, and then Baylor salted it away 38-10. Would love to hear what you have to say about the Baylor Bears as they approach a Big 12 play and a hopeful conference championship for them after, again, this rugged non-conference schedule. Let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.